pushback on October 24th, 2020. There is no greater day to be alive in America than today. And I want to introduce a couple of my friends. At the top, or on your left, depending on how you're watching, is the great Robert Knorr from Clarion County. And Todd Bartlett, right here in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, from talkwilliamsport.com and Fox Sports Radio. And with us today, we have a special guest. Our special guest today is Vince Matteo, who is the Lycoming County Republican Party chairman. And welcome to the show, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Doing great, Carlos. Good to be here.
Well, thank you very much for coming. And I want to, at the outset, just kind of like tell everybody who we are, what we do. And we are a show that is not a conventional show. You know, we believe in being real and being honest, and that idea kind of transcends to being trustworthy. So we also believe that because of what's happening in our country, we want to be able to share with people, give them tools to kind of look at their political world and the world in general through the eyes of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, for them to be able to, on their own 2 feet, defend their ideas. And that's the bottom line of the show. We're not the star of the show. People like Vince Matteo are the star of the show. So we had a debate last week, and Robert tells me that part of our audience was a little frustrated because, you know, we didn't light somebody up, and you know, that's not our job. Our job is to you know, try to share ideas and execute on ideas and listen to other people and what they have to say to better understand where we are and where we're going to go in the future. That's what we really want to do more than anything else. And that's why we have Vince Matteo here today, you know, to talk a little bit about his chairmanship in the Lycoming County Republican Party and his plans for the future. He's the new guy in town, not in town, but in with respect to being the chairman. It's a brand new day for the Republican Party under his aegis. And we'd like to talk about Lycoming County Republican Party and the state and the president, and how it's going for the president and what he sees as what we need to do to be able to get this man elected. And the Republican take. The Republican take, basically because we're very, very concerned and alarmed at the the best way that I can phrase it is like this imperious silence on high road from the Republican Party in general, in not responding to what's happening with COVID and what's happening with the riots and law and order. And not that I want to have Vince defend it, but I think that Vince has some really sharp ideas and is a smart guy. For you that don't know about Vince and are outside of Lycoming County, Vince was the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in the Williamsport area for a long, long time. More than 10 years and less than 100, and was very effective. It's how I got to meet him. He was the debate moderator for many of the debates that happened in Lycoming County, and that's how I first saw him, and I felt sorry for the man. Because, you know, that was a tough job, moderating those debates. So we'll talk a little bit about debates, but first I'd like to give him the floor and in kind of just giving us an overview of who he is and where he came from, and, you know, so we can get to know him a little better. Vince,
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I didn't know I was supposed to be intelligent today, Carlos. You didn't tell me that when you asked me to be on the show or prepared. Well, I'll give you a brief background, very brief, even though I'm getting older. It takes a little longer, I suppose. But I was born and raised in New Jersey, just like someone else on this, at least one person on this radio show was. Came to Pennsylvania, went to Wilkes, ended up staying in Pennsylvania, worked at the Scranton Chamber of Commerce for 7 years, Wilkes-Barre Chamber of Commerce for 14, and then here in Williamsport as president for just over 18, not quite 19 years. So I've been involved in the business community. My entire professional career really has been to promote job creation and business. When I retired, it'll be 2 years in December, you always don't want to do anything for like at least 6 months and then start doing something after that. And I got on the Republican committee, was elected to that, and then became chairman back in June. So, you know, you talk about walking into a maelstrom. I was on the committee for about 1.5 years when I became chairman, just learning all the ropes. And it's a big, obviously very contentious, very important presidential election year coming up. And not only presidential election, we have 3 state offices that are up for grabs in November in a week. And of course, our state senators, state representative, U.S. congressmen are all up. So it's an important election. My background, other than that, I think is, you know, from the personal side, and they don't need to know that, except behind me, you can't see it, is 2 shirts. One that has Mickey Mantle's autograph on it, and the other one has Captain Kirk, William Shatner's autograph on it. So those are the 2 personal sides of me, Star Trek and my beloved Yankees.
So the thing that I love most about Vince is that he's a Jersey guy, and he's a business guy. His love for the Yankees, I share. When I had a limousine company in New Jersey, I had a business and was in New York all the time. One of the places that we used to like to go hang out on 57th Street was Mickey Mantle's, and that was a lot of fun, the Essex House. And of course, Captain Kirk is the greatest leader ever, period, end of story, the end.
Right, he is. There's no question.
So he's the only leader that I really think I would follow blindly. But
right, beam me anywhere.
Exactly right. That's a T-shirt right there, guys.
Yeah,
get on that. Beam me anywhere.
Carlos, you're wearing a red shirt. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's not a good thing, is it? That is not a good thing. You want to stay on the ship, Carlos, with that red shirt.
So,
and Todd.
Give me.
It is a scarlet and gray game day Buckeye shirt. There is a major difference between scarlet and red.
Okay.
Where's the roll eye emoji when you need it?
Yeah.
So, can you, before I kick it off to Todd first and then Rob, can you give me just a cursory overview of your take of what's happened in the last 7 months nationally on the state level and then in Williamsport? Just take 2 minutes and give me an overview of the Vince Matteo take.
Well, I mean, the last 7 months have been the craziest 7 months I think that I've ever seen in this country. And you have to remember that I was in high school and college during the Vietnam War protests. And what I have seen now, though, is destruction for the sake of destruction. People not supporting law and order, not supporting our police who protect us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And while there are, like any profession, bad policemen, that is such a small amount. I mean, it's so minuscule, but we all always put the camera on that. And they need to be taken care of. But in a general sense, this country, because of the COVID, and in some respects, not enough response, in other respects, over response. You know, I do think the federal government maybe could have done more, but I'm not the expert on that. I do know that many of the governors, including Tom Wolf, who I refer to now as the dictator in Harrisburg, has done way too much. And we need to get control of this country again. And I don't mean control in a military or even a police sense. I mean control of our emotions as people. We have to all remember that we're all Americans, and we have to calm down and take a step back and say, what are we doing to this country? Why are we destroying this country? Do we have people tearing down statues of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington? It's crazy. We're worried about the name of a high school while our cities are burning. It makes no sense. And the country needs to get back in control. And I put blame on both sides. It's not just one side, it's both sides. We've lost our way, I believe. We truly have as a people. Locally, I think, locally we were doing very well until COVID hit. We had record low unemployment. Our businesses were booming for the most part. You always have bad ones in even in a good economy, you have some businesses that have problems. But in general, it was pretty good. You're in a city of approximately 28,000 people, a county of somewhere around 110,000. And I think the future was very bright. And I still think it is bright, but it's, we've all taken a hit. We mentioned that, I'm a Yankee fan, which means I'm a big baseball fan. And this was probably the toughest year ever without having Little League, which is one of the great joys of living in Lycoming County, is having the Little League World Series here. We need to get back to normal. And the only way to do that is to start talking to each other, not shouting at each other. Because when you shout, you're not listening.
Todd.
Oh, are you talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
Okay, Abe Lincoln here.
You're not quite as great as Abe Lincoln was, Todd.
How did that, I have another question, but how did that particular line in the debate the other night catch you?
Well, I've heard the president mention it, that he's done more for Black America than any other president since Abe Lincoln, or maybe more. But that's our president. He says things that I understand. You understand what he's saying, but he kind of over verbalizes, I guess, or I'm not sure what the right word is sometimes. But I kind of chuckled at him. But the point he was making was the fact that look at the record. Look what he's done versus what Joe Biden did over 47 years, which is basically make every wrong decision he could possibly make. So, I chuckled at it. It's just Trump being Trump, as the saying goes.
Can you give us an update? You talked about jobs in the area. The gas and oil boom that came, can you kind of give us an update?
Well, in the county, there's drilling going on. There's still drilling going on in the county. It's not what it was, obviously, because the price of natural gas and the type of gas that we have very dry gas here. So when the price is low, it's not as advantageous to pull that gas out of the ground because you can't make byproducts from it. Whereas in Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio, they have what's called wet gas. And you can get more products besides natural gas. Obviously, you can make methane and all the anes, as we call them, out of it. But in general, it's good. From a personal note, I have a son-in-law that's been working on the gas field now. He has been for probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 years now, and he's never been laid off. And they live here in Williamsport, so it's out there. It's not what the boom was, and we knew it wasn't going to last. That was gold rush mentality, but it's a big, important part of our local economy still, and it will remain that way unless someone bans fracking and we lose maybe 100,000 jobs in Pennsylvania.
Were you shocked at the end? And then Rob has the next one. Were you shocked with Vice President Biden's response at the end of the debate about the oil industry?
Not what he said. I was shocked that he said it. He said it before, and he blatantly lied when he said he's never said it, because I watched the show and the recap afterwards, where the talking heads tell us what we just heard, but, because we can't figure out what we heard on our own. But yeah, that he actually admitted it, because, you watch the shows after and there's the tweet he made about it, or there's the video of him on the debate stage during the Democratic primaries saying they're going to get rid of fracking. I was shocked he said it, but I know that's what he wants to do.
So Thanks for being here again, Vince. We really appreciate it.
No problem, Rob. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. One of the things that I think that people are watching that aren't from rural Pennsylvania might have questions about that I thought maybe you'd be a good person to answer. When we hear Joe Biden talk about he's from Scranton, can you give us kind of the impression of people in, granted, Williamsport's not exactly Scranton, but it's similar.
No, it's not. I've lived in both.
Right. So can you give us kind of the impression of what kind of the average person on the street in Williamsport or in a place like Scranton really thinks about Joe Biden?
I don't know. Mine would be colored. I laugh when I love the line the president gave the other night about him not being from Scranton. I lived in Lackawanna County, technically not Scranton, but worked in Scranton at the chamber for 7 years as an adult, as a young adult, and both our children were born in Lackawanna County. Those 7 years were more important to my development than the first. He lived in Scranton, I think, till he was 10 years old. Right. So he was born in Scranton. He's not from Scranton. And I think a lot of people in Lackawanna County and Scranton would tell you that's how they feel. And quite frankly, I really don't care where you're from. I always love people that, it always bothers me when political candidates say born and raised in Lycoming County, born and raised in Williamsport. I'm a homegrown boy. So what? What does that mean? It doesn't mean a thing where you're from. This is a country of mobility, and that's part of what makes our country great. It doesn't matter where you're from in this country. It just matters if you're from this country when you want to be president, I guess. Yeah.
Lincoln wasn't from Washington, D.C., and look what he did for our country. From Illinois and born in Kentucky. Yeah. So.
Well, I think he lived in Scranton until he was 8, Lincoln, and then moved it. So he might have been from Scranton, just like former vice president. But everybody's from Scranton. Hillary, they all claim to be from Scranton.
Well, let me ask you just a real quick follow-up. Seeing as how Joe has been in office for 47 years, including 8 years as vice president, when you were in Scranton, did you feel that Joe Biden was in tune with the area of Scranton? Was he visiting there a lot? Was he advocating for policies for the people of Scranton a lot? I didn't see it, but you were
there. Worked there, as I said, I worked at the Scranton Chamber for 7 years. And actually, we lived in Lackawanna County longer than that. I forgot because I worked in Wilkes-Barre for a year or two before I moved down to Wilkes-Barre. No, I to be honest with you, I didn't even know he was from Scranton when I lived there. And I knew who Joe Biden was. I knew he was a senator. I've seen him on hearings, and whatnot on television, but I didn't know he was from Scranton. Yeah. So who knows? So
what are your thoughts regarding the debate on Thursday night?
I think first of all, I think the first debate was a disaster for both candidates. I mean, it was an embarrassment, quite frankly. They didn't let each other talk. They, one would start something, they'd interrupt them. But the second debate, in all honesty, and I'm 100% fair on this, I am biased, obviously, in a sense. I thought Trump won the debate hands down. I thought Biden had a couple of good moments in the debate. I really do. But overall, I don't think it was a contest, that debate. And I think had the president done that in the first debate, this election would be over today. But I think Biden made some really big gaps, including, as you mentioned earlier at the end, where he was finally honest about doing away with oil, which I'm sure played well in Texas and Oklahoma and the Dakotas, and fracking and natural gas. So I thought the president won the debate, clearly.
You have moderated debates for years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a mindset as to what your job is and or at least how you personally view moderating a debate versus what we've seen in the last 3 debates, and including the town halls? That I'm lumping that as a one debate.
Yep. Okay.
What are your views regarding debate preparation and your whole mindset around it, and then tell us, how did the Republican establishment agree to have ostensibly every single one of these debate people be operatives for the Democratic Party?
Well, first of all, Carlos, let me make something perfectly clear, as a former president used to say, and that is that I'm not part of the Republican establishment. I'm new to the Republican establishment, if you will. I'm part of it, but I'm new to it. So I have no idea how they did that. When I was moderating debates, and I moderated, I would guess 8 to 10 without question, from state legislature, county commissioners, mayors, all of those. The biggest thing you need to be is fair and impartial, and you have to be impartial for it to be a good debate. I mean, when I moderated county commissioners debate, and there's Democrats and Republicans, and in most cases 4 of them on the stage, because you got 2 and 2. There were 2 candidates that I knew standing there I was going to vote for, but I couldn't favor them. You ask the same questions, you follow up, and without getting into names and personalities, because I wouldn't do that, that there was one commissioner running that at times that personally I had no use for, but I asked him the same questions. I treated him with the same respect. I didn't interrupt him. I cut off time for all of them. When their time was up, I say your time was up, and give them a half a minute to finish a sentence or a thought. Preparedness and impartiality are the 2 most important things for a moderator. The people are not there to hear you. They're there to hear the candidates. And in too many cases, the moderators on these big stages try to be part of the show instead of moderating, which is what they're supposed to do.
Right. And my follow-up question to that is, do you believe that there's a certain amount of combativeness that should be allowed? And how do you know when you're getting close to the edge, like happened in the first debate? And what are the things that you do to try to rein it in? Do you feel that part of the combativeness in the first debate was because the debate moderator wasn't fair?
Yeah, I do.
It seemed that way, right?
Yeah, and that's too bad, because Chris Wallace does a good job on his show, but he is extremely tough on the president. And you can just watch his show and listen to him and you hear it, or watch interviews he's done with maybe the president and then some prominent Democrat, and see how his whole demeanor is different. Right. And I'm sorry, I don't care if he's on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, he did a horrible job. And and he's not a big, he's good normally on stuff, but he was bad on that show, and he definitely it's obvious he doesn't like Donald Trump. And it was obvious the night Donald Trump was elected, because I happened to be watching Fox, and he was on with, might have been Martha McCallum, or no, it was one of the women, I think, at the end when they
Shannon Bream.
Yes, Shannon Bream. And he said that night, I'll never forget it, he said, America, and I'm paraphrasing in a sense, America will wake up to the realization that Donald Trump is president of the United States. And just the way he said it, with a smirk almost, told me all I needed to know, that he was not happy that night.
And that's okay. That's okay for him to be, but not at the debate.
No, exactly.
And if you want to respect that point of view that he has, you should be more fair at the debate. So you could sit there and say, you know what, Chris was fair at the debate, so I kind of now believe and understand what he's saying on this other side, his opinion side.
You know who moderator is? An umpire in a baseball game. Right. It's the same thing. My dad was a high school coach, and I'll never forget playing with it for him. And one of the umpires that would regularly umpire was one of my dad's very best friends. In fact, he was our mailman too. And I'll never forget, he threw my dad out of a game one time, but he was being fair. And it didn't matter that they were best friends off the field. And when that game was over, they probably had a drink of beer that night. But the point being is, your personal relationships, your personal feelings should not come into what the role of a moderator is and does. Your moderator is a traffic cop. You go, stop, go, stop. But to answer your original question on this strain, Carlos, is, yeah, sometimes a little antagonism, a little pushback is good. I always liked, and we didn't always do it because you have to get agreement from all the candidates. I always liked to give the candidates an opportunity to ask the other candidate a question. So
I love
President
that.
Trump could turn, they do their 2-minute thing, then they get into their whatever it was, 10 or 12 minutes of back and forth, but give the next question should go from candidate A to candidate B. He gets 2 minutes to answer it, and then the other then they switch. I mean, I think that's good because I would ask Biden a couple of questions, and I'm sure Biden would like to ask President Trump a couple of questions.
No question.
I think, and then you let them do open discussion. If someone's dominating it, then you have to stop it. And it's not fun to do, to stop. You want to be respectful when you do it, but you also have to be firm. But that starts at the beginning. If you aren't firm, it's like raising a kid. If you're not firm in the beginning, it's going to be tough to get tough later on.
Todd?
Looking back at the debate the other night, the current moderator seemed to be relatively fair, in my humble opinion, even though she was stepping all over the president every time he was making a point against the vice president. That said, can you give us a snapshot, Vince, of what Lycoming County as a microcosm, and then projected onto the rest of the state, what Lycoming County is going to look like as we approach the gubernatorial race, with Wolf not running again, and then the field starting to line up to run, and then with Senator Toomey, who was here and made the appearance at the chamber a couple of months back, what that Senate race is going to look like as well, and then how your role as a chairman plays into that.
Okay, well, the gubernatorial race in 2 years is going to be really interesting. I think you're going to see a number of candidates on the Republican side in the primary, and probably the Democrats too will have a number. Look, Lycoming County is solidly Republican. For Democrats to win in Lycoming County, usually it means the Republican Party is in disarray for some reason during a period of time. And it doesn't last long, Democratic control. Go to most of our townships, most of our boroughs, they're pretty much Republican control. So Lycoming County is solidly going to be in the president's column this year, and it's going to be in the Republican gubernatorial candidates column the next time around. I don't ever remember a Democratic gubernatorial candidate even coming close in Lycoming County to carrying the county. Statewide, I think with Senator Toomey making it clear that he's obviously not running for Senate, and everybody thought, well, that means he is running for governor because he was supposedly putting a big war chest together. I think it makes it a wide open primary for the Republicans. And I'm not sure there's going to be a big front runner. I mean, if you went downtown right now and asked the people on the street, person on the street, who they'd like to see as governor of Pennsylvania in 2 years, I'm not sure you'd get the same answer from any one person, because there is no one on either side that jumps out. I think Democrats, maybe Josh Shapiro is going to run. He assuming he gets reelected, which is a big question mark. I don't know if he will. Hopefully he won't in 10 days. But I think from Lycoming County, it's a solid Republican county. The state is always going to be a toss-up. Trump carried it this 4 years ago, barely. I think he's going to carry Pennsylvania again. A lot of thanks to Vice President Biden for his comment at the end of the debate last week, the other day. I don't think you're going to see major changes in the county. Where you do have the possibility of changes is within the city. We now have 3 out of the 7 council people are Democrats, and the mayor is a Democrat. So you really are only one councilman away from Democrats taking complete control of the city. And I'm not sure off the top of my head how many are up next year. I think it's 3. I don't know if you guys know for sure, and I'd have to check. I've been concentrating on this November, not next November. So that's going to be a very important local election in Williamsport next year, and for all of Lycoming County.
How do you feel, or how do you believe Governor Wolf's mandates and lockdowns and other policies have either played to the strength or weakness of who's running now at the presidential level?
I think his lockdowns have helped the president. I think all of the lockdowns that have become so severe have helped the president because people are tired. You know, in March, they told us 2 weeks to flatten the curve. The other day, yesterday or the day before, a huge show that's held in February in Harrisburg was canceled. In February, now you're talking about a year, not 2 weeks. There's a little difference. I think what the governor has done is to help to destroy small business in this state. That's going to take years and years to recover. I thought it's almost an insult when he came out with his program, was it of $20 million to help small, because they've suffered. Yeah, they've suffered mostly because of your draconian tactics, Governor. And he needs to understand that, but he doesn't care. He has a Supreme Court that is controlled by liberal Democrats. So anything he does on a state issue, he's going to win. I see no way that the Republicans can carry the day in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And that, Todd, is one of the issues that Republicans in Lycoming County and Republicans in Pennsylvania have to understand. These statewide elections are critical to how this country goes, how the state goes, I should say. If we had more Republicans in offices like Auditor General or Treasurer, there'd be some checks on the dictator. There are no checks now. All of those offices are controlled by Democrats, and the Supreme Court is controlled by Democrats. And Democrats do a better job of voting for those offices than Republicans do. Republicans seem to care about the U.S. Senate, the presidency, whoever their local congressman is. They don't seem to care about who the Auditor General is, who the Treasurer is. And that's a problem Republicans statewide, the PAGOP, quite frankly, has done a horrible job with, and they need to get that straightened out.
So my question I had, and this is kind of a difficult one, so let me preface this by saying, certainly I'm a Republican. I despise the establishment Democratic Party. When I talk to people, though, that aren't heavily involved in politics, that live in rural Pennsylvania with me, they see, particularly at the national level, our Republican representation not doing much for them. For example, it seems like our elected Republican leaders in Congress, in my district, in District 12, in other districts, were more excited to criticize QAnon and people that believe, regardless if they're conspiracy theories or something, more so than they're willing to criticize Antifa, Black Lives Matter, people like Governor Wolf that are locking down, people like Secretary Levine that put COVID patients in nursing homes to die. And so there's this frustration that we keep voting for these Republicans. And I know, as you said, I feel the same way. We're not part of that establishment Republican level. But what do we tell those people that say, why do I vote for Glenn Thompson again? Why do I vote for Fred Keller again? If it seems like during the most trying time in modern history, they did nothing to impede the Democrats and their total takeover and authoritarianism.
That includes Trump, by the way.
Right.
Say that again, Carlos.
That includes Trump, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, let me quote the president, drain the swamp. It's a swamp. I am a firm believer. First of all, let me just say one thing. I think Fred Keller does a good job. He's in his first term. I think you need to give him time. Freshman congressmen don't have any power. You know, they do what they can, and that's it. But I understand what you're saying, Robert, and I don't disagree with it. You know, there was a term used I haven't heard it in years, and Carlos is old too, so he might remember this. It was used to be called Potomac fever.
Yeah.
And what that meant was you had, you know, these guys who ran for office, and they were everything you said, Robert. They were going to do this, they were going to do that, blah, blah, blah. They get down there and they catch Potomac fever and they fall in line. I mean, think about this. You cannot tell me that there's not one Democrat in that U.S. House of Representatives, and they have 200 and some seats now, that disagrees and will vote against Nancy Pelosi. I'll tell you what that tells you. And this is both sides. I'm not picking on the Democrat. They're just in control of the House right now. Not one in the Senate showed up to that hearing the other day. I mean, what happens is the power that the leadership gets, and it's the same in Harrisburg on these committees, or the Speaker of the House, or the minority leader, the power is too great. And there's two reasons why their power is too great. There's no term limits and money. Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House because the woman can raise money like probably no one who's ever been there before. And it's not just her, it's both sides. So we need to have term limits, because then I think people will go down and do what they wanted, what they said they were going to do, because you cannot have somebody who's been there then 40 years and has accumulated all these power, all these IOUs. I helped Carlos, now he's got to help me. I voted for you, Carlos. You got to vote for my bill.
Right.
And you have $100 million in your campaign account. I only have 20 million. You need to give me some of that money. That's the problem, Robert. It's money, and it's accumulated power because of longevity.
And mindset. And mindset.
Yeah, and a mindset.
Right.
Because if I go down there, let's take, I go down there and I'm a freshman congressman and I open my mouth, guess what committees I'm going to be on? None that have any pull at all. None. Because that's the power of the lead. And leadership should have some power. But how can a leader be allowed not to allow, or a committee chairman not to allow a bill to come to the committee for discussion? If I'm a member of the House, whether it's Washington or Harrisburg, and I have a bill, it should get a hearing in the committee. It may not get to the floor if the committee votes no, but they make rules. They don't even have to bring it to the committee, the leader. We're not going to talk about that.
Right.
That's power, and that's caused by longevity, and longevity accumulates money and power.
So there's a couple of things that I'm very frustrated about, and since we have, and to have a Republican point of view here, and not, hey, listen, it's not just for Republicans, it's for Democrats. If we are to believe, like we all do believe here, led by our fearless leader Rob Knorr, that the only way out of this is if we do it together. I completely agree.
Yep.
The yin and the yang.
Yep.
So based on that, I am looking at the debates. There's no question that I thought that the president won the first and the third and the town hall. For a lot of different reasons. I don't want to consume the time with my opinions as to why, but I have two questions for you.
Go ahead.
Were you satisfied with the way that now we have 3 opportunities that were put to the president regarding COVID and his response? Were you satisfied with his response? What if Dr. Vince Matteo was president of the United States, how would he, based on what happened and what Trump did, how would he defend what the president did and what this country did and this government did with respect to COVID and with respect to seizing control of these cities in the United States that were basically under siege? I was not satisfied personally with the president's response. I thought that the president could have done much, much better. He had 3 shots at it, and go ahead.
I agree with you 100%. I wasn't happy with his responses on COVID because I think he's done quite a bit. And to go back, with hindsight is easy to do. It's not, we all do it, let's be honest.
Right.
Even if it's not fair, we all do it. But I think at the debate, he should have listed and spelled out every step they took in chronological order and said, look, we learned about this whenever it was January, December, whenever they learned about it. Here's what we did. We put together this team. We went to Dr. Fauci, whoever they went to, and quote Dr. Fauci, which he did. Masks don't work. This isn't that it's not going to be much more than the flu. And Dr. Fauci admits he did that, but he needed to spell out what we did do. When they told us we needed a vaccine, I forget what they call warp speed. How could I forget?
Right.
They're doing at warp speed, developing a vaccine. They built all the ventilators. They did the hospitals. They built the hospitals. They put the ships out. One in the West Coast, one on the East Coast, the naval ships. He had dozens of things he could have listed. And he did the I almost said blockade. That's not what I meant, but stopping the Chinese
Travel from China, right?
Thank you. Travel from China and then from Europe. He did all those things. But here's the other thing that they've never, the opposition is attacking him, and that's okay. That's what they're supposed to do. That's politics. But they've never showed. He's never talked about how Europe. It's not his fault. Even if let's say it was Trump's fault that America's in the condition it is in with COVID, is it his fault South America is that way? Is it his fault that Canada is the same way? Is it his fault that Europe and Asia are the same way? No. This is something completely new, a new virus, and you can argue he should have done this on March 1st instead of on March 3rd. You can argue he should have, been xenophobic, as the vice president said, let Chinese continue to come in. He didn't spell out what he did do, not what he should have done, but what did you do, Mr. President? And he has a pretty good case that he did everything he was told to do. In fact, Dr. Fauci, and I've seen him say this, said everything we took to the president, he did.
Right.
And so that's talking to the experts.
So from the Republican point of view, are you curious as to what Vice President Biden said regarding, and he said it in the first debate and he said it in the third debate, and, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, he said, and I quote, if the American people knew what the president knew in January, come on, man. So I'm not trying to be funny.
No,
what did the president know in January?
I don't know what he knew.
And why is this such an aha moment? And why did the president not respond to it based on the fact that on January 31st, he closed down and traveled to China?
Yeah. And in February, Nancy Pelosi was in Chinatown in San Francisco saying there's nothing wrong.
On the 24th of February.
And de Blasio in New York was doing the same thing.
And if the former vice president was that concerned, why was he not expressing those concerns in real time?
Well, because he didn't know either.
Well, he was calling him xenophobic, and I understand that's politics. Don't get me wrong, I understand that. But what is the smoking gun that the vice president is talking about that the president of the United States knew in January? I think
part of what they're doing is they're playing on the fact that he said in his interview with Woodward or Burns, one of those guys. Anyway, he said in the interview that he played it down because he didn't want to panic the people. And I get that. I understand that.
Everybody does.
Including
Joe Biden, right?
So but he's saying the Democrats are saying, well, see, he knew he should have been more honest with the American people. Well, you know what? The government hasn't been honest with the American people since the Revolutionary War ended. They've held secrets from us. Every government has, every elected leader, and sometimes they need to keep secrets from us. We understand that.
If I can interject real quick, the other fundamental part of this question is, let's say the American people did know. Why are we just assuming that, that would have meant less death? I mean, the World Health Organization came out and said that lockdowns don't work. So what would have happened? Okay, let's say that Trump comes out January 20th and says, yeah, you're all screwed. This virus is going to wipe massive amounts of people out. And then what were the people going to do differently? They would have stayed locked down.
Because had he done that, Rob, the stock market would have crashed. Businesses would have closed. People would have gone all with him in his basement in Delaware. Half the country would live with him. And the economy would have collapsed. There's no question. If he came out and said what you just said, that, that we're all going to die, well, then the economy is dead.
Right. Well, and it wouldn't have, I don't think that it would have stopped people from behaving differently than they were. Remember, you already had people panic buying toilet paper. The people that were going to panicked, and the other people were going to go about their lives, as we still see to this day.
It's October. It's almost Thanksgiving, and you still can't buy some products in the stores.
That's right.
Because of this.
Right. And so just on cue, we did not plan this. Robert just asked the question out of the blue. And I was just going to say, with respect to Biden asking the president to be honest with the American people, I was just going to say that Robert Knorr has taught me that the American people are going to do what they want.
Right.
They don't listen to the
yeah.
president.
Yeah.
They don't listen to anybody except themselves. So
The
right
only
on cue.
reason-
Thank
the
you,
only
Rob.
reason restaurants, restaurants and bars can't rebel because of a liquor license.
Right.
They have no choice because the dictator in Harrisburg will come and rip their license off the wall. He's done that on a bunch of restaurants and bars in America,
Including Clarion County, right, Rob?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but Americans will end up doing what they want to do. Look at the Trump rallies.
Right.
I mean, tens of thousands of people. Look at just locally, the river regatta, how many boats were in that. You have to be safe. You have to be careful, but you can't live in your bunker. I'm 67 years old and I have 3 grandchildren. And if you could guarantee me I will be alive a year from now, maybe I wouldn't see them, for a year. But you can't guarantee me that. And I'll be danged if I'm going to live in a basement through this whole thing. I wear a mask because they tell me to wear a mask. I'm careful where I go. I'm not in big crowds, but I'm living my life the best you can with everything, nothing going on too much.
And I think that one of the funniest things that people lose sight of is, let's assume, even though I disagree with them, let's assume that the left's argument is correct and that it's all Trump supporters' fault that this virus is spreading because they don't social distance and they don't wear masks enough. So their argument is Joe Biden would have been able to convince Trump supporters to socially distance more and wear masks. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. There is no way that's true.
No, you're right, Robert. There was another part to that question, Carlos, you asked me.
National security, and I was just letting Rob finish. Do you feel that the president answered and with respect to law and order and what happened in Seattle and what happened in, mainly in Minnesota, in Wisconsin and Kenosha, obviously, and in Seattle and in Portland. So you had 4 hotspots. New York, Philadelphia, there was a lot of hotspots. Pittsburgh here and Lancaster.
They were short
hotspots.
Yeah.
So could you just touch on the idea of what rules, what are the rules that are incorporated, obviously with the state first and then the government, can come in at any time. But do you think that the president defended the fact that he believed in law and order enough to satisfy Republicans? Forget about the Democrats because they seem to not,
The thing that he didn't, and I'm trying to remember from the other night on the debate, and I may have been going and getting another glass of wine when that question was discussed because I don't remember what he said. But I will say this. We do not live in a benevolent dictatorship. He cannot send troops in without being invited in.
Right.
And that's the problem, in my opinion. I believe that the National Guard should have been in every one of those cities the first night of the next night, the first night after the first night of the riots, the second night. Every city should have National Guardsmen there, and they needed to make arrests, and they needed to hold them. In New York, they get arrested, they're out on the street in 10 minutes, 20 minutes at the most because of their laws. This is, we're a republic. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. These individual states have rights, and we cannot send in federal troops or federalize the National Guard without the permission of the governors, is how I understand it. Which is why, had I been president, I would have been going through impeachment now because I probably would have sent in troops to protect restaurants and businesses and homes that were being attacked. I do not understand how a mayor or a governor can stand by and not give their police and their National Guard the power and the authority they need to protect people's property. It's not okay to burn down a house. It's not okay to burn down a bar. It's just not. And
so you just did that in 2 minutes, right? That was the 2 minutes that you would have had at the debate, and to give a civics lesson to the American people, putting it directly back on these Democratic governors who allowed these things to happen.
Well, where did the one area that they had a lot of problems get resolved quickly? Kenosha. And what happened in Kenosha? They were allowed, they asked for help, and he sent help in.
Right.
And it was quelled pretty quickly. and that maybe could have happened. You know, the peaceful protests in the beginning were fine. These protests were the riots, I mean, not the protests. There's a big difference. The riots were spurred on. They have the video of them bringing in U-Haul trucks with bricks and different things and dropping them off and people taking them out. And
right, in Louisville.
You know, it's just amazing. You can't, if I'm the governor, if I'm the mayor or the governor of a state or a city, and I don't ask for that help, there's nothing the president can do within the Constitution. Because had he sent in troops without permission, he'd be being impeached for a second time and maybe removed from office for doing that.
So my question is, and I'm sure that this is on everybody's mind here in this show, is if you're a Democratic candidate in an election year, why won't you disavow these things? Why won't you disavow the violence and the rioting and the looting and the arson? Why would you not disavow that at all?
I don't know, Carlos. I mean, you have a man running for president of the United States who says Antifa is an idea. That's exactly what Biden said, if you remember. I think it was near the end of the first debate. Antifa is not an idea. Antifa is a terrorist organization. Go on their website, see what their goals and their objectives are. It's the same as Black Lives Matter. It's the same thing. Black lives do matter, but the organization Black Lives Matter, you know, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon.
Mm-hmm. Just like, you know, the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, whose name I will not say, you know, with his socks that had, you know, pigs dressed up as cops and claiming an alleged oppression.
Yeah, but why a Democrat or anyone wouldn't say that when they're running for office?
I don't get it.
I don't either, because there's just right and wrong, and wrong is violence is wrong unless you're defending yourself or your family.
But I will say, again, I hate to bring it back to this, but it seems like at the national level, the Republicans are more interested in condemning supposed right-wing groups.
Yeah.
How many of them, how many
yeah.
stood up and said, would it be too much for my representative to stand up and say, hey, our district's not systemically racist? There aren't two Pennsylvanias, Mr. Wolf. There's one Pennsylvania. And for you to race bait and to claim that the constituents of our district are systemically racist is absurd. That seems the bare minimum that my leader could do, and I don't hear it.
Yeah, well, that's fair. It's
a frustration of ours, Vince, because
it is of mine too, because there are certain things that are right, certain things that are wrong, and right-wing extremism is wrong. Period. It's bad. Racism of any sense is bad. Left-wing extremism is just as bad. It needs to stop on both ends. You need to condemn both sides for what they do. But you're right. It appears that more was done about a peaceful movement back in the day. The just went out of my head. I'm sorry. The taxpayers revolt. Years back, which was very peaceful.
The Tea Party, yeah.
Thank you, Tea Party. I couldn't think of Tea Party. The Tea Party, they were made to look like violent, murderers. They didn't do anything. There was no violence. Antifa is starting riots, prolonging riots, promoting riots. And you're right. Other than the president, you hear very few Republicans even attacking that left-wing extremism. One of the problems, Rob, I think is social media. It gets so much play for five people can complain about some product's logo, and the next thing you know, you have people wanting to change the logo of
right.
something.
The Redskins are no more.
Yeah. The football. What are the Washington Football Club? And I don't want to get.
I see what you did there, Vince. I see exactly what you did there. Down, demeaning the Washington Redskins, my Washington Redskins, ex-Washington Redskins, typical Giant fan.
Listen, I'm a Giant fan, and it's not a pretty thing. I mean, they had that game. They had that
battle.
game Thursday night. This is a true thing. This has actually happened. I was watching the game, and my wife came in the bedroom. She said, "What are you watching?" And I said, "Well, I'm just getting ready to switch off the Giant game because they're winning by 14 points, and I don't want to see how they're going to lose it." And that's a true story.
Prescient.
And I went and I hit previous channel and went to watch something else. But look, this is still the greatest country's ever been. We live in it, and it has the greatest opportunity for everyone, regardless of race, regardless of color, regardless of creed. But we're not listening to each other anymore. We're shouting at each other, and there are basic things that need to be done to straighten it out. And I really do. And I know my friends in office hate me for it, but I'm sorry. I believe in term limits because unlimited terms give you people like Speaker Pelosi and others on the Republican side who have too much power and too much money. You know, one of the best lines the president made, and of course it was glossed over, was the fact that Joe Biden is a multimillionaire and he's been in a U.S. senator or he's been in elected office his whole life. How did they become millionaires? They go to Washington and all of a sudden 10 years later, they're millionaires. Donald Trump was a millionaire when he got to Washington, and it's not just Biden. These people who are there forever all come out extremely wealthy. How did that happen?
Plunder.
Rape and pillage.
So,
plunder.
You said something earlier. The future is bright.
Yeah,
and listen, we agree with you. But with respect to the problems that we see in both parties, and I'd like to focus on the Republican Party because that's the party that we basically all belong to.
Mm-hmm.
I live by rules. And one of them is something that I took from a book called The Rules of Power, The 48 Rules of Power by Robert Greene. It's necessary reading if you're in politics or in business. Rule number 6. What is unseen, what is unheard, counts for nothing. That being said, just hold that thought. Vice President Biden called what's coming in the near future a dark winter. So think of the idea of him saying dark winter and someone on the other side not saying anything. Are we talking about the person that says nothing? The answer is no. So that right there is the point that Rob and Todd and I are very, very, very concerned about when we have elected leaders at all levels that say nothing. And I'm not entirely certain what the tactic or the strategy is, because if you say nothing, it counts for nothing. And I could go down the list, locally as to just what happened last week with Joe Ham, who's running in the 84th, not showing up and not responding at all. With our representatives on the state level, U.S. representatives, not saying, not just putting out a video and putting their thoughts onto what they think of the condition of the country on Kenosha, on Seattle, on Portland, on what's happening in New York, on printing Black Lives Matter in New York City on Fifth Avenue.
Well, that was so childish, right in front of Trump.
No, I get it. But the non-response.
Well, yeah, because
can you address that? I mean, because listen, there's a lot of things that are at stake for you, not because of the positions that you hold, but because you love this country so much. See, if you didn't care, you'd be like, I don't have to. But you do care, though. Right?
I don't have to do this. I'm retired. I'm happy. I'm not rich, but we're not going to.
But I know you care.
Starve.
Right.
But we care. I care about this community first, and this country. My community and my country first, and we need to get this straightened out. And I do think people need to speak out. Why Joe and those guys didn't respond, that's their individual campaign decisions that they have to make. But the broader picture, the bigger picture is we need our leaders to speak out. We need them to say this is wrong or this is right. We need to know where they stand on specific issues because again, we're not listening to each other. And if you're not talking, you can't listen either. Your comment about your rules, I thought you were going to get into the rules of acquisition, but that's a Star Trek reference, Carlos. But many years ago when I was in Scranton, a Democrat, Bob Casey, who I had nothing but the greatest respect for, a man who stood on his principles, by the way. His son's an embarrassment to Pennsylvania, but we won't go there. But Bob Casey told me, he said, and I was probably 27, 28 years old at the time. And he said, Vince, if it's not in the newspaper, and that's when everybody read the newspaper in those days, it didn't happen. And it's the same thing that you can say about what you're saying with your rule. If you don't speak out, if you're silent, the people that are silent are as guilty as somebody who tells a lie because they didn't tell the truth by speaking out. Mm-hmm. And you need to do that. If I see you walking down the street and you throw a Molotov cocktail into a house, it's my responsibility as a citizen to go to the police officer and point to you and say, he's the guy that did it. But people don't do it. And one of the reasons is they're afraid. Heck, you got people that won't put bumper stickers on their cars because they're afraid. Mm-hmm. They won't put signs out in front of their house for who they're voting for because they're afraid. This country is polarized like it's never been before, and it's not President Trump's fault, and it's not Joe Biden's fault. It's our fault because we've allowed it to happen, that we won't talk to our neighbor because they have a Biden sign or a Trump sign.
Mm-hmm. Or flag.
Or flag, yeah.
I want to go to final questions from the guys, but before I do, tell me what's happening with the Lycoming County Republican Party and what are your plans and how can we help?
All right. Well, the first thing when I took over as chairman in June, my two biggest goals was one was we need, if we're going to be an effective party, you need to raise money so that you can help your candidates get elected and help and find good candidates. Okay. So we really did a lot in getting the party is probably more financially healthy than it's ever been before in a very short time because of, the major fundraiser we held with Eric Trump Jr. That was goal number one, and obviously in the November election on a more, smaller scale in a sense. Goal number two is to get more people involved in the Republican Party. There are approximately, and you probably know this better than I do, Carlos, 70 some voter precincts in the county. We only have half full. Half. People just and you know what? It's not just the Republican Party. When I was president of the chamber, it's hard to get people involved anymore to do something. So my next goal is once we're through this election and hopefully the president is reelected, we are gonna make a concerted effort to fill as many of those positions on the committee as we can, and to fill them with younger people if possible. If not, get a bunch of old folks like me, I guess. But we need new blood in the Republican Party. We need them to be energetic, and we need them to work.
Right.
A little known secret, it's not a secret because a lot of people know it. I was a Democrat, registered Democrat my entire life until I moved to Lycoming County. And I had switched to being a Republican, if not registered, probably 15 years before that because of all my work with businesses. But I finally changed my registration when I moved. And I did that because I saw what the Republicans stood for, or it said we stood for. And that was a strong America, a strong economy, a strong defense. And we need to get young people who believe in those things. And there are a lot of them out there. And we need to get them involved. So my second goal, hopefully by next June, we won't have all of them because it takes time. We'll have many of those seats filled. And if we can fill, a dozen of them, that's a lot. But the other thing we can't do is we have to understand that we need to be, I hate using this phrase, but we need to be a Big Tent party. We cannot say, no, you're not a Republican because you don't believe in A, or you're not a Republican because you believe in B. You know what? There's room for differences within the Republican Party. We can't have pure there are some litmus tests, quite frankly, but there's too many, and we have to stop that. That's my biggest thing.
Final questions, Robert Knorr.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the exact same thing I've been saying. For example, we need to reach out to groups that don't historically vote Republican, like young people. One of the takes I'm trying to make with young people, which I don't know as a 36-year-old if I could consider myself a young person anymore.
Oh, yeah, you're young.
But one of the things I'm saying is I think the Republican Party is the party of fun. We're the party that you could joke. We're the party that we're not going to comb through your social media history from when you were 13 years old to see if you said something that was slightly offensive to ruin your job. We're not trying to get you fired. And I really respect the idea. One of the things you said that I really respect is that we do need to be talking to each other, because we're the party that says we're not trying to censor anyone. If you disagree with us, that's fine. We could still be your friend. We could still talk about it. So, I don't really have a question. I just want to say I totally agree with you, and I agree. And I think that you offer some good suggestions on the importance of local politics and how, look, you don't have to be an expert to get involved. You just have to be someone that's concerned about your town, concerned about your country. And there's a place for you. There are people that could, you could help be involved to help make this country and this area a better place. So that's all I had.
Well, you bit the bullet there, Vince.
I just wish I just had you, and I know Robert was going to say that, I'd had that I was correct and he agreed with me. I'd had my wife in here to hear it. Can we televise this on a later?
We'll send you the link for sure.
It's on YouTube. So.
Actually, we'll just cut the clip and send you the clip.
That's all I want is that. Yeah, we'll do like the big shot politicians do. We'll take it out of context.
Yeah.
Very good. The great Todd Bartlett. Final questions.
First of all, Vince, thanks for being here today.
Anytime. I had a lot of fun.
What does it look like in Lycoming County going forward in your crystal ball in the next 3 to 5 years?
The crystal ball is foggy only because we don't know when this is going to end with the lockdowns. And that's the big issue. But let's say the lockdowns end or pretty much end by the end of this year or even next June. Okay. 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to be, because it depends on who's president the next 3 to 4 years. I believe that the local economy will bounce back as long as we continue to move forward with some of the programs that are in place now. I really think, Todd, I hate having a cloudy crystal ball, but the fact of the matter is, one of the cliches you always hear is, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And 99.9% of the time, that's BS. It's not. But you know what? This one is. Since I turned 18 and we first started to vote, this is the single most important election in our lifetime. Because it really will change America, either change America fundamentally or keep America on a course that it's been on for a long time. Okay? If Biden is elected president and Kamala Harris is vice president of the United States, I honestly, seriously believe that this country is in trouble the next 3 to 5 years. I believe that with all my heart, and I hate to believe that, but I really do. I do believe this is the single most important election in my lifetime.
And does the backstop then become the Supreme Court?
If it's not packed, yes, it does. I mean, that's why putting Amy Barrett on the court is critical. That happens this week, because then it will be 5 to, people say 6-3. That's not true. At the most, it would be 5-3-1 with one neutral. Goes whichever way the wind blows. But yeah, it is critical, that Supreme Court. I don't believe they'll pack it, by the way. I think they'll try. I don't think they'll get it. I think for once there will be enough Democratic senators that will say, hey, wait a minute, guys, this is not right. And that goes the same with statehood.
Well, and that's where I part company with Todd, because the real backstop is the sovereign.
Is what?
The sovereign, the voters.
Yeah.
Well, no, and we agree because the sovereign have to bring the cases.
Yeah. But here's the thing, Carlos, with that, and I understand what you're saying, and philosophically, I like to believe you're right. But if they get control, if they were to get control of the White House, the House, and the Senate, before anything could be done to take it away, they can do a heck of a lot of damage to this country. A heck of a lot of damage. Now, look at what, all of these executive orders that really started under President Obama, and the President Trump has continued. I don't think most of them are legal.
Right.
They don't have the right to do them, but nobody challenges them.
Right.
Or
They only challenge the extreme ones, right?
Yeah, the real extreme ones.
Yeah.
These, we do not have a king, regardless of who's in office, or a queen once that happens one day.
Right.
But we're allowing them to become, and now that we've opened the door to lockdowns, to people telling me that I can't leave my house in the United States of America, think about that. How can that not anger anyone? But it doesn't. People are like sheep. Oh, okay, Governor Wolf, or okay, whoever. It's unbelievable. And we're not talking about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. If you tell me to wear a mask and I go to Wegmans or some other store and everybody has masks on and they make them feel better, I'll wear a mask. You know what? I was going to say the hair off my head.
Right.
That's not a lot left anyway. But for the important things are not wearing or not wearing a mask, what they're doing to this country. They're telling me I can't open my business certain hours. They're telling me I can't have a drink after 10 o'clock at night. I mean, how did this happen in America? This virus, this pandemic has already fundamentally changed America, because we have proven that there's enough of us that will meekly accept dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rob Norris said that in March.
Well, he's smarter than me. He got it quicker.
So last couple of questions here from me. The first one is, we're one councilman away from the city of Williamsport turning Democratic.
Correct.
First question, how did that happen? Question number two, what was the greatest lesson you learned as president of the Chamber of Commerce? And question number three, if you had a magic wand and you had one wish politically, what would that be?
That's a tough one. What was question number one? Was you lost?
We are one councilman away from being a Democratic. How did that happen?
In my opinion, complacency on the part of the Republican Party. I mean, that's the biggest reason. Now, the city has
the whole entire apparatus, voters, donors,
sitting office holders, the members of the Republican committee. Complacency. We win 99% of the elections in Lycoming County. We're going to win these elections. Doesn't matter who's running. I'm not sure the party leadership, and I could be wrong, but I'm not going to say it that way. The party leadership, which is me and other people now, need to go out and recruit candidates to run for office. So we have
we need a bench,
and then we need to support them financially, verbally, the whole thing. Answer number one, in my opinion, the biggest reason is complacency on the part of all Republicans in the city. What was number two question?
Number two question. What is the greatest lesson you learned in your experience in leading the Chamber of Commerce?
If you really want something, you got to go get it. You can't wait for it to come to you. And I'll give you an example of that. We too much for me on my part, I think. But, in general, the chamber and the county got a lot of credit statewide for what we did when the natural gas boom came. We organized, we actively recruited companies. We put all these, we went, 6 of us went to Fort Worth for a week, right in the early beginnings, before we even knew what was going on, to learn. And as a result, we have the Marcellus Industrial Park. We had all these other companies. We have all the drilling up in the hills up north of us because we went and got it. Halliburton and those companies were looking at Southern New York with or without a ban. They could have still located their businesses there, or operating strictly out of Western Pennsylvania. We went and we got them. And if you put that in the general context, it's the same with anything. If you want something, you can't wait for it to come to you. You need to try to go get it.
Right. The prom queen isn't going to come to your house to date you.
Well, she's not coming even if I go. I married a prom queen. She didn't win the prom. She should have probably in her high school, but what are you going to do? I've only been married 47 years, Carlos. I'm still learning.
Third question. If you had a magic wand and you had one wish to fix something political, what would that be?
Oh, it has to be political because that would have been the World Series and the Yankees. But I think it would be, and I don't mean physically go back, but as a nation, go back to a time where people on opposing parties or opposing positions could still be friends because they can still talk to each other and not hate each other. I don't hate, to a time where Robert likes, I don't know, Biden and I like Trump, so we can't talk to each other. That's what I think we need to go back to. It's just, it's unbelievable. I mean, I have a brother and a sister. My sister just moved to Florida not that long ago. My brother's still in Jersey. I mean, they're liberals, and we've almost gotten to a point where we've argued and we stopped because we said, hey, wait a minute, it's not worth our family to fight over this stuff. And that's what we need to do as a country. It's not worth what we're doing to the country. For me to see people stand there, good people, and not speak out about the violence in our cities, it just shocks me because they're afraid to speak out. We need to give them the opportunity, the courage to speak out. That's the other thing I do with my magic wand.
So in closing, Todd wanted me to ask you this, but Rob thought it was too much of a cultural appropriation thing. But what is the best bocce ball court in Williamsport?
On the side of my house, actually, with my grandkids, we play bocce all the time. I don't usually win because I think they cheat, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I would like to number one, thank you very much for taking this time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
And we would like to actually have you be a regular guest to come on and give us some insight and wisdom like you have on a regular basis on specific subjects as we go moving forward. And you are a friend of the show and come back anytime. And any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, first of all, let me answer that. I will come back whenever we can get our schedules together. I'd be happy to do it. I really enjoyed this. And besides politics, I'd be glad to talk to you about baseball, science fiction, whatever you want, Carlos. And not Ohio State. Todd, I'm not a big college football guy, but I am a Catholic boy who grew up in New Jersey, and there's only one football team.
That's right, Notre Dame, buddy, or go home.
We'll see you in the final. It's okay.
When I received confirmation, it was, do you believe in God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and Notre Dame? And the answer was yes. Bishop,
Right. Not to mention that there was a movie made about, the Rudy, and
Rudy.
He didn't play for Ohio State.
That wasn't a bad movie. Ohio State's a good school if you have.
It's fine.
Yeah.
How's Rutgers going?
I did my undergraduate at Wilkes, and of course our neighbors was King's, and of course we always said that King's was a good school if you couldn't get into Wilkes.
Touchdown Buckeyes, even at 7.
Is it? All right.
Yeah.
Penn State play today? Yeah, 3 o'clock or something.
Yeah, and then we're playing Penn State next week.
Yeah. Well, Clemson as much as I hate to say this, Clemson's going to crush Notre Dame when they play. Notre Dame's good, but they're not that good. Yeah. I mean, I think Clemson would probably beat the Giants, the Redskins, the Eagles.
The Jets.
Wow. You and I could get a team of 11.
All right, that's just being redundant now. Yeah.
All right, guys. Anything else?
No. Thank you very much. And we enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
We'll see you.
So that was Lycoming County Republican Chairman Vince Matteo. And I'd like to thank him for joining us. So I wanted to move before I gave my usual opening statement. I wanted to see if we'd change things up a little bit and have the guys do that first. Todd, what's on your mind this morning?
Well, we have a update on the Williamsport area schools districts and the school board. Mm-hmm. They took a vote, 2 of them, in fact, earlier this week to return to school, and they ended in 4-4 draws with one of the board members being absent. So out of the 4 no votes, Jen Lake, Barb Reeves, Nancy Somers, and Pat Dixon. Well, I've already done stories on Jennifer Lake. There'll be more of that coming out. I discovered some things about board member Barb Reeves, and I've since published those as potential conflicts of interest. This morning, I received some information from Barb Reeves' husband, Marwin, who is a pastor. They serve in ministry together. And he's asked for me to rescind the story that I wrote. The next board meeting is Tuesday night, and I'm working through what he has sent me earlier today. Mm-hmm. He's also threatened legal action if I choose not to rescind it. Mm-hmm. So I'm working through that as we speak. And I think you know my track record on rescissions and retractions.
So the very first thing that they respond to when they're being criticized is they threaten to silence you. Am I getting this correctly?
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. I'm not going to comment on it specifically because I have a bad history with Pastor Reeves, and this is not the place for me to be able to talk about it. I had actually forgotten about it, but it's pretty damning, and I'll pass that off to Robert. But I will say that the reason why they behave this way is because there's something there. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And now that he's inserted himself into the story, there's some details and some facts.
It's time to dig deeper now that he's in it.
Oh, I have it right now that there are facts in the record that he's very well aware of, that he may not be aware that I'm aware of those facts.
Oh.
I'm more than welcome to publish those.
Right. It's time to dig deeper, Reverend. Hear what we're saying?
Here's the part of it.
It's not
There's
fair.
There's nothing
though.
in the story that's not linked to their own website. It's information on their website.
Right.
But if I could play devil's advocate, it's not fair to them. We in this country are used to not having real journalists for the past 20 years. So it's really bad luck that there's actually a real journalist. You know, they're thinking, what are the chances in the entire country we found the one real journalist that's looking into our corruption? You know, I feel bad.
And at this point, I wouldn't classify what they're doing as corruption, but there are some serious questions. And just share with us what the tip of the iceberg looks like with respect to your concerns, Todd.
Roger Freed, who was involved in the Myrtle Beach investigation from the school side, who was brought in as the second administrator, has been a pastor in their church. They've worked side by side. Roger Freed,
Right.
Marvin Reeves, Barbara Reeves have worked side by side over
And
the
that's
last several
devastating
years.
because that's devastating because he's a two-time mandatory reporter from the ecclesiastical side and from the high school side. And you should know, the audience, you should know that to this day, nobody has called the Myrtle Beach police, letting them know that there was a sexual attack or 2 sexual attacks minimum in Myrtle Beach 2.5 years ago. To this day, no one's reported it. To this day, a pastor and a assistant high school principal in the role of a pastor and assistant high school principal have not reported these crimes. That's why it's a big deal.
And a pastor's wife who's a board member.
Yep. So your other concerns are, or continue with your concerns, sorry.
If they're working together, whether it's today or previously, there's the appearance of a conflict of interest, which is exactly what the story says.
Right, to keep the schools closed.
Right? So was a favor called in to keep the schools in remote learning, which, by the way, not to bury the lead, 1/3 of the high school classes that have been offered since school came back in are failing. The absenteeism rate is over 1,100% year to year from last year to this year. I think they have a problem. And the problem is the kids are not back in school face-to-face learning. The hybrid model, the online model for that particular district is not working. Here's another ironic twist, and then we'll go to Rob, right, Carlos? There's 2 superintendents or two schools in Lycoming County, the Williamsport School District and Montgomery School District, that are in the hybrid model. Everybody else is back 5 days a week.
Everybody in the county.
Everybody in the county is back 5 days a week.
How many school systems are in the county, give or take?
There are 9 high schools, 8 public systems, and then you have St. John Newman, which is the other high school, right? So 8 public school systems. 6 are back into 5-day a week, full go, right? Precautions. If you have a case, they quarantine, people in that classroom, they stay home, they recover, as most everybody does. But Williamsport and Montgomery are in hybrid. What's the common denominator between Williamsport and Montgomery? The 2 superintendents are married to each other.
Ouch. Ouch. So, is there any evidence that the teachers union got to these board members?
There's a group of 40 teachers that said we don't want to go back in the classroom. It's too dangerous.
To stay home. Pastor's wife doesn't want to create trouble, doesn't want to be seen voting no, so she stays home, right? That's plausible.
And said in the open meeting that because of a no vote, she didn't want to be punished for expressing her concern as a no vote.
Ouch. I'd say this is why that these are the unforced errors that these people make in when we give them our trust to do the right thing, and this is what they say and do.
So
this is why there's stories being written about them.
So let me just say, I wasn't going to talk about this, but while we're on the subject of schools, here in the district that I live in, I obviously don't have a kid in school yet, but my neighbor does, and he told me this story. There are kids that are getting detentions in the high school because the local high school had a COVID case. Before they went in person, they had a meeting with all of the parents and came up with a plan on how they would wear masks and social distance when they're in the school. After this COVID case, they shut down for one day and then went back to school. Without informing the parents and the families, they decided to change the rules. One of those rules were you were allowed to ask your teacher permission to pull your mask down if you were a student, because it's difficult to wear a mask for these kids for 8 hours a day. His daughter and a bunch of other kids had received detentions. The principal was going room to room, finding kids that had the mask below their nose, not warning them, but instead giving them detentions. And he asked me what I thought about this. For those of you that are just listening, just hearing this for the first time, maybe you had the same thought I did. According to this man, you're at risk of contracting and spreading COVID if your mask isn't worn properly. So his solution is to lock all of those most at-risk kids together in a room. Do you see the stupidity? And these are the people that, like, and it's the same. So I only bring it up. I'm not saying that's in any way connected to the story you guys are talking about, but it goes to show these teachers' unions and these people that are coming up with these draconian orders for our kids in these schools, they don't know what they're doing. The very basic level of the things they are suggesting are garbage. These teachers' unions are one of the biggest enemies our country has. They are almost solely responsible for the horrible education system that occurs in black communities in the inner city. That's because teachers' unions are against charter schools and other things that are proven to work. They are advocating basically getting your tax dollars for doing nothing. They never want to go back to work. They want to sit in their house. That's what these teachers' unions are saying. And I cannot express this enough. If you are a teacher, you need to get control of your union leadership. Because if you don't, the American people are going to realize how worthless you are, that we're paying all of this tax money for you to sit at home and not teach our kids. And they're going to say, we don't think this is a good deal. We're tired of paying taxes to you. Right. So you better rein it in.
We're there.
Right.
We're there. So real quick, before I go right back to Robert, Todd, did you ask the Reeves for a statement?
Actually, I didn't. I asked him to do an interview as a family on Zoom that we could either go live to Zoom and then YouTube or bring you guys in it.
So ostensibly you did.
Absolutely.
And they said,
tell your story. No, we have a conflict. We're not going to do it. And this is the response.
Okay. So Robert, what is your response to people trying to coerce journalists into silence? And let me remind you that I'm not a journalist, but I'm not a propagandist, and they called the police on me. And on Todd, somebody firebombed his car. Listen to me. There has never been a firebombing in Lycoming County in the history of firebombings. And they firebombed Todd Bartley's car in his driveway at 4:00 in the morning. What are your thoughts, respectfully, regarding coercion of journalists in general, Robert?
So here's the thing, and we talk about this a lot. The truth is the establishment, particularly the establishment Democratic Party, their ideas are so bad that they need to have 100% control of the flow of information for people to be willing to accept it. When the press, which we barely have a free press, pats themselves on the back and gives themselves awards and has dinners that says, the fourth estate is so important. Tyranny will come if we don't have a free press. The irony is they're right. The problem is we don't really have many people that are a free press. And then when you do have good journalists, keep in mind, let me just, for the audience out there, if you're new, Todd was reporting, this isn't a political story. This isn't partisan. Todd was reporting on local, principals, teachers, coaches, government officials, police officers that were not correctly covering or investigating, or in many cases covering up, sexual assault of 2 underagers. That has nothing to do with, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Right. And they
2.5 years.
That's right. They firebombed his car as a result of that reporting. And he's gone through many more threats and many other, just people trying to censor him or people trying to intimidate
bricks
him.
Through his windows, cut his tire, right? How many tires have you gone through, Todd?
More than I can count.
And you can see, why is that? Because the people that are doing that know that they can continue to get away with corruption if there is not a media person shining light on that corruption.
Holding them accountable.
We could see that, look, this story with Hunter Biden, I don't even care about Hunter Biden. I care that it looks evident that Joe Biden used his position as vice president to enrich his family and possibly himself.
He made the United States for sale.
That's right. That's disqualifying. That's a felony. There should be an investigation. However, our corrupt FBI won't investigate. But almost, I think a bigger story than that is you are watching in real time the press abdicate their job. You're watching them proving what I've been saying for years, that they are not a free press. They don't hold truth to power. They bury the truth for the powerful. And the few journalists that have spoken up, most of which by no means are big Trump supporters, but for example, the other night in front of an airplane where they asked Biden, they said, what do you say to this New York Post story? What'd Biden say? Oh, I knew you would ask this. You're always bringing up stuff like that. Where was the free press? Did they defend that person? Or how about a few days later when the hard-hitting media asked Joe, Mr. Vice President, what type of milkshake do you have there? And he was like, I got one vanilla and one chocolate. And then another media person said, how do you respond to these allegations about your son? You know what the rest of the media did? They laughed at that journalist. See, because to those media members, asking questions about milkshakes, hard-hitting journalism, asking questions about corruption of the man who is, according to the polls, going to be the next president of the United States, that's not newsworthy. And so this is devastating. Remember, and if you're listening right now, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. Remember the Iraq War? Remember how we were like, oh, we were lied to? And journalists came out 4 years later and say, geez, we regret we didn't question the administration more. We regret that we'll do better next time, though. We'll do better next time. What do you think happens going forward if we don't have a free press? Let's say Joe Biden wins and just says, we're going to attack Pakistan. What are you going to do? You're going to go on social media and say, where's the proof for this? Why should we do this? That's cool. The media works in conjunction in the Democratic Party with social media. They'll take your comments off. You think that you trust Stephanopoulos at ABC? You trust the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC? They're going to tell you that this is a corrupt war? They ain't going to say anything. That's the future we're looking at. And I'm sad to say, look all around you. Look at the disinformation that people are willing to believe. Joe Biden's central claim for why he got into the race was that Trump called Nazis good people. That's a lie. That's provably, if you do 1 minute of research online, you could find the exact video of Trump's comment to see that it's the opposite of that. He said there were good people on both sides. I'm not talking about the KKK and Nazis. They're clearly horrible and should be condemned. That's what Trump said. That's the dystopian future we're entering. So to answer your question, Carlos, the few journalists that are out there that try to do the right thing are intimidated, they're attacked, and that's going to lead to a dystopia that's worse than something that Orwell could have imagined, where not only do you have people that are uninformed, but they're convinced in their ignorance that they're the people that know best, and they blindly trust these propagandists that refer themselves as media, no matter what they say.
Todd, so what's next with respect to you being threatened, and what's next coming down the pike journalistically with respect to this story on the board of the Williamsport Area School District?
I'm not rescinding it. If anything, he just stepped into the arena and is going to understand what it means to step into the arena.
Right.
Without a fact, without the law on your side, you're going to understand what it means to step into the arena.
Right. And of course, I don't think that they're ready for, threatening litigation means opening up a whole wide, beautiful door to discovery, which is a beautiful tool. Discovery is a beautiful tool, as we will soon find out in other things. So yeah.
And try, by the way, try claiming pastoral privilege between two pastors.
Yeah.
Try that on.
Yeah.
And to this day, as of right now, as of 12:40, Roger Freed is still listed on two different, on the same page, two different ideas, camp and youth ministry.
Right. But that's not really what concerns me the most. Here's what concerns me the most is the swampiness. What are the odds of having a board member that is on the school board run a church, or what do they call her? The
first lady.
The first lady of the church.
She's the pastor's wife. That's fine.
Also be host to another pastor that works at the high school. And listen, that could be a coincidence. But if you start dissecting these 11 people that are on the board, the 9 on the board that are elected, the president and the superintendent, if you start dissecting and contact tracing the relationships that these people have amongst each other on the outside of the board, you would be frozen with concern.
Let's just say this. If they use the COVID app that the Department of Health puts out, everybody would be in quarantine.
Everybody would be, yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good metaphor. Anything else that you have that concerns you on this 24th of October morning, Mr. Bartlett.
I'm going to give everybody one of the biggest teases we've ever done on this show.
A tease?
And then I'm going to defer the rest of my time until final statements to Rob.
Oh, boy.
That's a lot of time.
We had for about 6 minutes today a guest that was scheduled to appear in the noon hour. That guest has deferred to a later date. And we can't wait to have that
But
guest.
for 6 glorious minutes,
Yes.
we cleared the plaque from our arteries.
Yeah.
As they say. Yes, I am also very, very excited about our upcoming guest that's coming. Robert Knorr, what's on your mind?
So, one of the things I was talking to Vince a little before the show was kind of this Supreme Court ruling on Pennsylvania. So the Supreme Court with John Roberts, noted conservative, right, appointed by Trump, once more shows his true colors and votes with the Democrats in a 4-4 decision to allow ballots to continue to be brought in up to 3 days after the election. In addition, we have a Pennsylvania court that is now just ruled, I believe yesterday, correct, that you're not allowed to reject ballots if their signature does not match up with the voter registration. So in other words, if you write your signature and it's your signature everywhere you go, but all of a sudden a ballot comes in with your name that the signature is totally different, that's fine. We have to accept that. So you don't have to show ID, nothing like that. It's just, different signature. They're going to steal Pennsylvania. That's what this is about. All of these changing the rules on voting, proposing universal mail-in ballots, changing the system 2 months out. This is about them doing everything they can to steal the election. It's not just the voter fraud that they'll cheer for. They claim doesn't happen. You could read the news stories yourself. Every week we find a new official that's arrested for voter fraud. We find more ballots that have been thrown away. The stories are out there. We're talking about a race that in some states could be decided by 10,000 or less votes. Thousands upon thousands of instances of, ballots coming up missing, being rejected, and things like that. And that's all because they're changing the rules for no reason. We have to change the rules because of COVID. Oh, but we're going to go out and protest for Black Lives Matter again. We can't go out and vote, but we can go out for Black Lives Matter. So it's clearly nonsense, but understand how they're cheating in every possible way. When they talk to you about election interference of Russia, remember, they thought that it was seriously a big deal in cheating, that $50,000 of ad buys were placed on Pokemon Go and Facebook, most of which weren't seen until after the election, many of which had to do with things like promoting causes for LGBT or Black Lives Matter. They thought that that was a serious election interference worth discussions on Capitol Hill, trying to find ways to fight this. Meanwhile, we have almost every major media company in the country and social media companies actively, in unprecedented ways ever seen in this country, suppressing stories that are critical of Joe Biden, going after Donald Trump as aggressively as possible, and violating their own standards and their reasoning for this. They say, well, we can't report on things that were unverified. It says the same group of people that reported the P dossier for over 3 years, which was Russian disinformation. It says the same group of people that reported every sexual assault allegation to Kavanaugh, though there was no proof of any of it happening. And in the case of Christine Blasey Ford, the only witness that was her best friend said that they were never in a room together, as Kavanaugh and Ford, as they were claimed. Those people are blatant hypocrites, and they're interfering in this election in a substantial way. Dr. Robert Epstein testified in front of Congress that up to 16 million votes could be swung by Google alone. And yet the same people, your friends on the left and the Democratic leadership and the media, they'll tell you with a straight face that, oh my God, we have Russia. We have, look at what Russia's doing. Meanwhile, they have no problem with 16 million votes being able to be swung by election interference by tech companies and media companies in the United States. It's asinine. And, this is one of the things that, I was kind of getting to with our guest Vince there. But look, Republicans, instead of fighting back against this or doing anything, what do? Go to Twitter, watch after they're censoring the Hunter Biden story. They sternly wag their finger. Now, Jack Dorsey at Twitter. Now, Zuckerberg at Facebook. Someday we'll subpoena you and we'll make you ask questions. That'll get to the bottom of things. These Republicans have done nothing. And the truth is, many of them are cowards and they just want to keep their position. And the truth is, many of them want to see Donald Trump lose because they're part of the establishment. And so they want total control of the flow of information, which this is. They want the propaganda and indoctrination, and that's why they've done nothing. And if they do nothing, our democracy and our republic will cease to exist because the propaganda is so strong coming from these people. And I know the people that are watching right now from the left go, it's okay, it's against Orange Man and Orange Man bad. It will come for you. We are losing our country. It's happening like we've never seen before. They're telling you right to your face. Yeah, NPR put out a statement 2 days ago. We fund NPR with our tax dollars. They said, yeah, we're not going to cover the stories critical of Biden. We're not going to do it because we can't verify it. This is the same group that all the stories on Kavanaugh, all the Russia stories that were Russia disinformation. And meanwhile, what do? They accuse you exactly of what they're doing. So now when you call out any kind of Democratic corruption, they just say, like, you can't criticize us or you're helping Putin. It's Russian disinformation. That's what your journalists are doing. People that are supposed to hear a story, be critical, look into it, report that story to the people, they're actively keeping you from seeing these stories. So that's what's on my mind. I see the theft of our country right before our face. I see my friends on social media that report, the truth as they see it. I'll admit all of us could be wrong. They're being censored. Hundreds of channels being taken off YouTube, Facebook that are critical of the Democratic Party. We see stories like the New York Post, 200-year newspaper, still banned from Twitter. Why? Because they were critical of the Bidens. You can't do that. And so, I mean, it's that story alone. Even if you hate Trump, you need to reject this. If you vote for Joe Biden, this is what you're voting for. State-controlled media. Totally. The complete control of the flow of information. And when it comes back to bite you, I don't want to hear your sob story. Oh, I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me that they would come after me or candidates I liked. I just hated Donald Trump. I didn't mind the FBI spying on Trump. I didn't mind the media and social media censoring Trump supporters, but now it came after me. So, vote with your conscience, I guess, but it is the most important election in my lifetime, and we'll see how it goes, I guess.
So I mirror your concerns. I guess let me start at the top. The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since September of 2019 and didn't do anything. But do you understand why? The reason why is because there was a more important operation happening in December of 2019, and that was impeaching the president of the United States for just questioning the Biden Ukraine influence and bribery scheme that was factually evidenced, this is irony, in the Biden laptop that the FBI was holding.
Carlos, let me ask you this. How many times during impeachment did you hear me say this? Let me make a point without saying any names, any political parties, right? Carlos and Todd, you both agree with me. The United States is such a special country because we're different. We're not a country that was for a specific race of people, like England for the English, Spain for the Spanish. That's not the United States. We want the diversity. We like that. But we have to have things that bring us together, ideals, goals, right? There needs to be some cohesion.
And an assimilation of those ideas.
That's right. Let me give you one of the statements that I think we all need to agree on if we're going to have a cohesive country. You ready? Tell me if any of this sounds controversial. If you're in the executive branch of this country and you use tax dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor that's looking into a business that your family member is on a board of directors on, there needs to be an investigation.
That's coercion.
Right? I'm not saying you're guilty. I'm saying that every single American should be able to say, yeah, that needs to be investigated. Right? Does anyone disagree with that?
Nope.
They impeached Trump for that. They impeached Trump.
After the video of Biden bragging about it came out. Afterwards.
A major political party in this country with almost total institutional control of every non-governmental institution, the Democratic Party, their followers, their media, their Silicon Valley, their academia, they all knew this. And they said, yeah, it's okay for an executive branch leader to use your tax dollars in a quid pro quo to force the firing of a prosecutor that was looking into his son's company, as long as it's the Democrats. Right. And it's a crime for Donald Trump to want to look into it. From here on out, this is going to be the fight. Whoever wins this election, I will guarantee you the big issue I'm talking about 6 months from now is this will come out. This story of Joe Biden will come out. The Democrats don't care because they don't even want Joe Biden to be the president. They want Kamala Harris. So they don't care. So they'll have Joe Biden fall on his sword eventually. Well, he's not going to actually be punished, but okay, whatever. It was just a Biden thing. It's not a Biden thing. It's Obama and Biden. They're the ones who did this quid pro quo. The entire Democratic Party knew about it. They tried to impeach Trump.
Susan Rice.
The media knew about it. All of these people are guilty in this cover-up. And you know how I know they knew about it? Because we knew about it. And we don't have any special access that someone like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi doesn't have. So that's what infuriates me. This is not a partisan point. The emails now that are coming out are just proof of what we've known for months. We've known this for months. And so the emails coming out, and now the media is just telling you, we don't care. We don't care at all. What are you going to do about it? We're just going to lie.
There's no such thing as a smoking gun.
Right.
Right.
Todd wanted to say something there.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, the Bobulinski, the guy that had the press conference before the debate, he was on the emails.
Yep.
He was part of the company. He's given testimony that was more compelling than anything that I saw, heard, read in the impeachment of the current president.
Look at Cohen, right? Cohen used to be Trump's lawyer. So when they went after Cohen, because this was the plan, as we all knew, even the judge in the Manafort case said this, the plan was to go after everyone associated with Trump, find any lie or reason to raid their property, to investigate them, and then turn the screws on them to try to get them to flip on Trump, right? That was the plan. So Cohen was Trump's former lawyer. The media was salivating. Oh my God, what's Cohen have to say? Does he have something negative to say about Trump? He was financially connected to Trump. Whatever Cohen says, my God, we need to hear it. Yet, when you have a business partner of the Bidens admitting their corruption, they're like, oh, that's not good enough for us. What's his motivation? Todd, did you hear this? During the Bobulinski interview, at the end of it, he's like, I'm not going to be taking questions. Imagine that you're a journalist in the room, Todd, and you just heard, which is one of the most incredible witness statements of corruption at the national level that we've ever heard. What sort of questions would you have? I'm assuming, Todd, you'd have a million questions. You know what
There's
the media...
only one that matters.
What, did you hear the one they yelled? The media
Did you
yelled?
have a meeting with Bobulinski?
Well, did you have a meeting with Biden? Right. But did you hear what the media's question was, Todd?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. To Biden.
Right.
Did you have a meeting with Bobulinski? Right.
Did you hear what they shouted to Bobulinski?
Yeah, who's paying your way?
Who paid for you to be here? Who paid? Did they say that with Cohen? And isn't it funny? Bobulinski, who's a whistleblower, Bobulinski's a whistleblower. Now all that matters is who has Bobulinski met with. Oh, we got to go through this guy's life with a fine-tooth comb. Now, the whistleblower on Trump in the Ukraine, we have to keep his name secret. It doesn't matter if he met with Adam Schiff. It doesn't matter who paid him or who he's associated with. This is garbage. Everyone could see it. And the problem, I take that back. Everyone can't see it. And that's the problem.
Everyone can't see it because rule number 6, what goes unsaid counts for nothing.
We talk about these experts, right? When I debate these people, I have to constantly debate. Well, Chris Wray at the FBI says Antifa is just an idea, and Antifa is not the problem. It's white supremacy is the real problem. So that's Trump's FBI guy. So the FBI said there wasn't a problem in their investigation of Trump in the Russia collusion. So that's what I have to, this constant appeal to the authorities. We could have doctors that could look at you in the face and say, hey man, you can't leave your house or millions of people will die of COVID. Oh, unless you want to burn down the city in the name of Black Lives Matter. We as doctors say that's okay because white supremacy is a bigger virus than COVID. We have to trust those people? Or how about this in New York? We have to trust, I'm just so furious today. We defend the police. We're the people, our side's the side that's defending the police. Yet the police in New York City, did you see the video yesterday? Going into Jewish homes, criticizing them because there's too many people at that Jew's home. Too many people there.
There's
Meanwhile,
more than 10 people in this house.
If there were a bunch of people that were screaming Black Lives Matter, blaring music and twerking, the police they'd join them. They'd be like, yay! Oh, you want to kill us and defund us? Yay! okay, we'll leave you go ahead, but not those dirty Jews. Oh, by the way, it's the right that's the anti-Semites. Not them, not the party that's endorsing Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam that want to wipe Jews off the face of the earth. No, that's the Democratic Party. They're the party under de Blasio that's going after the Semitic community in New York arbitrarily just because of their religion. That's what's happening. I mean, I don't know what to tell people anymore. If you can't see this, like, I'm not arrogant to the point where I'm saying, oh, I won't talk to you anymore, but you need to really, really, really sit back and just always do this. Put the shoe on the other foot. If instead of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, this was Donald Trump and Don Jr., would this be a story? Would you care? If you found out that Don Jr. received $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife, would you care? If you found out that he was on an email saying, I got to hold 10% for the big guy, would you wonder if that's Donald Trump? If Donald Trump fired a prosecutor using your tax dollars in a quid pro quo, would you think that's something worth investigating? Of course you would. You know how I know that all of my Democrat friends would say yes? Because they were all for the impeachment of Trump over his unproven quid pro quo. So Trump does what may or may not have been a quid pro quo, looking into a crime. They say that's impeachable, that's a crime. But Biden admits to a quid pro quo, and they're all of a sudden it's no problem.
It's no problem.
But, I think that it's, we have so much to do regardless of who wins this election. And one of the little fights that I'm taking on myself is this idea of this appeal to authority, that if authority figures tell us something, it must be true. You need to be able to think for yourself. Certainly there are some things that being an authority figure matters. For example, if you're an epidemiologist, then yes, by default, I'm listening to you more than someone like me if it comes to a virus. But that doesn't mean that you're 100% true or right. And certainly when we could prove that you're being a hypocrite and acting politically, you should no longer be trusted. Dr. Fauci, for one. And so, I'm just sick and tired of it. Like I've said a million times, I'm not going to listen to a medical expert that tells me this virus is so smart that if you go to a Trump rally, you'll spread the virus to millions of people. But if you go next door to the Black Lives Matter rally, no problem. It knows not to infect you. That's garbage, and you need to start understanding as a person, you don't just trust authority figures because they're authority figures.
Well, I'm with the Democrats on this one. I will not believe the scientists. I'm going to believe the science.
Right.
Well, that's it. There?
I mean, listen, I got kicked off YouTube twice. I had 2 videos kicked off for talking about, and I'm careful to say this, I'm not offering anyone medical advice. In my personal life, I wear the mask quite often, and I'm dealing with a lot of people with comorbidities. It's my choice to wear the mask. I do it most of the time. So I'm not coming from that place. I merely pointed out the dangers of the lockdown and the actual real world harm that it's causing. And for that, I get censored. Now the World Health Organization came out. What do they say now? Yeah, we don't recommend lockdowns. The only thing provable that lockdowns did was make poor people poorer. That's the head of the World Health Organization said that. So now all the people that said, you got to trust the experts, where are they now? Now that the World Health Organization is saying that, are they saying, my God, we were wrong. Wow, Rob, you were right. We should have questioned these lockdowns. No, they're just saying, well, we just won't listen to those experts. We only listen to the experts that help us achieve political power. That's what they're saying. And they're hypocrites. They're constantly violating their own orders. And that was, I thought that was one of the best lines of the debate where Donald Trump said, Americans can't all just live in their basement like you, Joe. Absolutely. It's easy to be high-minded and say, you need to take more precautions. You need to take more sacrifices when you're so wealthy that you live beyond the effects of those sacrifices.
Well, if you go out and you post any type of convincing aha moments that prove that masks don't work or anything that goes against the media narrative, and you post about it on Facebook and Twitter, you will get banned.
Think about this. According to Facebook and Twitter's rationale, if in March you did like I did, which I was one of the only people I heard say this, and Carlos, you could back this up because we talked about this line. I said, without knowing anything about this virus, the fact that the experts in our country at the CDC came out and said, don't wear a mask is something so stupid only an expert would say. Because it just defies belief. They're admitting we know next to nothing about this, but don't buy a mask. Don't wear a mask. I was like, how do you know? You know the efficacy of masks before you know anything else about the virus? Again, I'm not saying I think masks work or don't work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they definitively came out and said don't wear one before they knew anything. So the point I'm making is my statement in March where I said, this is stupid, I can't believe the CDC said this, would have got me kicked off. If they would have found me, they'd have said, oh, you can't disagree with the CDC. So if I said, but the people that were telling me that, saying, actually, masks don't work, now if they say that, they get kicked off. So the idea is we have to take people off they're jeopardizing people by disagreeing with the experts. When the experts flip-flop on what they believe every 2 weeks. The experts were telling us in January, oh, this isn't going to be a big deal. All the experts at the Washington Post and Nancy Pelosi and Dr. Fauci, they were all telling us, oh, the panic's the real problem, not the actual virus. That's what they were telling us in January before they realized they could use it as a political tool to crush the economy and try to blame it on Donald Trump. So now you better be carefully watching the CDC if you're an independent content creator, because they shift in any way the wind's blowing to help the Democratic Party. And what you're saying today could be considered a scarlet letter tomorrow to get you kicked off of polite society. I mean, I can't believe that we have, just like Vince said, I can't believe that we have so many people that are willing to live under this arbitrary dictatorship that we see being pushed by all of these governmental leaders. And I mean, and I've said that, this is the last thing I'll say, this could be my final statement. I've said this before. I think this is the greatest country in the history of the world. I think we stand on the shoulders of giants, whether it be the founding fathers, whether it be the slaves that were freed and went on to become prosperous and having all this ingenuity and became great people, the soldiers that sacrificed, people that were doctors, nurses, teachers, welders, engineers, whatever. We stand on the shoulders of giants. What am I going to do when I die and I walk into the afterlife and there's all the great people that came before me and they say, hey, we heard you lived in the United States of America. What'd you think? And I'll say, it was the greatest country in the history of the world. It was my privilege. I'm honored that you all fought and did so much for that country. And then they'll say, well, how's it going? Oh, a virus came and we gave it all up. Sorry. Is that what you want to be? Is that what you want to have on your conscience? That we're the generation that gave up the greatest country in the history of the world because we had a bunch of experts that said, well, you can't go to work, you can't go to church. If you're Jewish, we'll come into your house and harass you. But if you want to burn down the building and you want to go riot and protest, no problem at all. That's how we're going to lose this country. I mean, that's what I'm fighting against, and I hope other people start to wake up. I totally get people being fearful. I get people wanting to make sacrifices to help. But if you're accepting the arbitrary garbage that's being put forth by these dictators, you're making a huge mistake.
So, the answer to Rob's question is very easy. Why are we here? Because the average person doesn't understand politics. The average person today was not the average person back in 1776. They cared more. We don't. It's not a shot. It's the truth. When there are people that are running for office that don't know what the Bill of Rights are, if they can't distinguish the difference between the 9th and 10th Amendment, if they can't understand how the 6th, 7th, and 8th were born, never mind the first 4, the first 5, can't run for office. Sorry, you can't. The average person believes the things that they want to believe. So here's the evidence that Joe Biden is guilty. You know what the evidence is? When the New York Post story came out, Twitter censored the story where you couldn't see it. That's not it. That's not all. The last I heard, the New York Post Twitter account is still locked. 9 days later? Still think that Joe Biden was innocent? Really? Why would you lock?
Biden's team hasn't even denied the emails. They haven't even denied anything.
Yeah. It's Biden's laptop. It's Biden's emails. And now the FBI has not one, but two whistleblowers, letting them look through their emails, proving all the things that Biden did. Let's set that aside. Our forefathers created a country for people that are not us. They are for us, but not like us. Okay. If you could check for me, Todd, if the New York Post Twitter account is active yet. I don't believe so, but regardless, people will believe whatever they want to believe. Okay. I'll give you an example. Here locally in Williamsport, the local board said that they didn't want to vote to bring us back to full-time school because they were concerned that the teachers would all die. All right, would all get sick and maybe die. Where is the idea that basically runs education of putting kids first? Where is it? So kids are not first, right? Teachers are first. Their safety is first. We have 4 board members that think that kids are not first. Never mind that the Myrtle Beach incident punctuates the fact that kids are certainly not first in the Williamsport area school district. But the problem with average people not knowing what they're talking about and then behaving as if they were is when elites do it. You ever been in a social situation where you run into someone that says, well, but I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a stockbroker. You know, imagine Bernie Madoff saying, I'm a stockbroker. You know, the higher the level of their elitism, the more we believe them. Oh, well, he's a doctor. Oh, well, he's a judge. So there is someone that I follow and I love and I respect and I adore in the media, and that is Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday has been a lot of things. He's been a marketer, he's a writer, but the core context of how he made his bones is that he is a prolific reader, which is how I discovered him. And a prolific follower of the Stoics, which is something that I subscribe to. He has a website and he has a newsletter. He has got a couple of newsletters. And this week, he wrote a story, and I'm going to put it up here. Todd, I hope that you have sharing available here, but I'm going to put it up here so you guys could see it. There, and there, and there, and there, and there, and okay. So this is what he wrote. And this is his page, Ryan Holiday, Meditations on Strategy and Life. Like I said, he's a prolific writer. And this is the blog post from this week. Dear Dad, please don't vote for Donald Trump this time. And the post goes on to talk about his point of view of what's happening in this country and what's happening with Donald Trump in a letter basically begging his dad not to vote for Donald Trump. Okay? So I will save you the time. It's a very long post. Okay? Very, very well written. And very honest and has some really good points in it. But here's what you guys need to understand. Ryan Holiday, in writing this post and making his case against the President of the United States, draws from some facts or figures and statements that are absolutely, totally false and debunked. Completely and utterly false and debunked. Starting with the fact that he's a Russian asset. Listen, we can have a lot of discussions in our country, but if you still believe that the President of the United States is a Russian asset, it's disqualifying with respect to having an honest conversation about what the truth is. If we can't even agree on the truth, how are we going to get to the future in one piece? You're supposed to be an elite. What's in it for us if you're an elite? What's in it for us? What are the benefits that we get as the little people that you're an elite and you're at the top of your game and you are a controlling sovereign watchman for our well-being? What's in it for us if the basic facts of your arguments are untrue? I sent Ryan Holiday an email. Ryan Holiday answers emails, even to little people, to invite him to come onto the show and talk about it in a nonpartisan way, or in a partisan way to talk about the facts. See, what makes Robert Knorr a thermonuclear debate weapon is the fact that he only argues facts. That should be a concern for you. And on Todd Bartley's behalf, he only investigates facts. That should be a concern to several reverends in the city of Williamsport. A major concern. But we need to be able to move forward into our future, which is very bright. And I don't care what Joe Biden says. It is not a dark winter. That's not a lie. That's a damned lie. And shame on you, Joe, for trying to use scare tactics and fear mongering to try to get elected. I have never in my life seen the coercion of us having to hear your very best ideas only after you get elected. So I will try to get Ryan to come on and talk about this letter. But in the meantime, do better. Live the life that you're meant to live and do better and care more than necessary. Everybody knows what's required, right? Everybody does. Care more. Caring is undefeated. Drive is undefeated. That is the only way we're going to get through this. By educating ourselves, by caring about each other, by having more understanding, by asking more questions, by listening more, by understanding more, and by not being anybody's fool. Stand on your own 2 feet, because no one else can do that for you except you. Until then, Godspeed, and we'll see you all next week.